on this computer. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Tina Fox with TERN Mentoring. This month, I have the phenomenal opportunity to interview a friend from the past and a renewed friend from today. That is Dr. Alexander Gabbin, who is a Baltimore native for any of you Maryland fans. He graduated from Howard University with a BA in economics and math. He went on to the University of Chicago for his MBA, and then finally his PhD in accounting at Temple University. Now, although he is a CPA by trade and he's served both in Illinois and Pennsylvania, I know him as Professor Gabbin at James Madison University, which he ended up in the early 90s. And when I met Professor Gabbin, he was professor of accounting. I was actually a College of Business major, or a hopeful major. And unfortunately for me, I took this accounting class and I did not do very well, but I really enjoyed meeting Dr. Gabbin. I ended up making a change in my life to communications, and that has served me well. And then almost 30 years later, this is how the world works. Wouldn't you know it? I happened to bump into him at a gathering of folks at James Madison University, and his face just rang a bell. And I went up to reintroduce myself. And in that reintroduction, it was almost as 30 years had not passed. And I was looking at him again as Professor Gabbin of accounting, to whose class I had unfortunately not passed. So it was one of those full circle moments. And since then, I have had the opportunity to connect with him and his lovely wife, Joanne. And we've become fast friends. And I wanted to tell the story of Dr. Gabbin, but also present to you who he is as a person, not only in the university in his role, but in how he has served all the way through life. So welcome, Dr. Gabbin. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So in our previous conversation, you shared that you've always been a seeker, which I love that term, because not everybody is a seeker. I'm authentically curious, but I love the fact that you're a seeker. And in your seeking, there's a fundamental question that has you continue to seek for the greater good. And that question that you brought up to me, which kind of stuck with me, is, how does one go through life and make a difference for the greater population? And one of the things I thought about was the fact that in 2000, you'd received the National Black MBA Association Lifetime Membership Award. And that must have been a very proud moment, because it started way before that in order for you to get that award. And your choice to engage in the Black MBA community started by something that has led it to be where it is today. So can you talk to us a little bit about who you are as a seeker, and what are your thoughts when it comes to making a difference for the greater population?
Well, I have to approach this question from the perspective of my core personality. And it is impossible for me to talk about anything along these lines without acknowledging that, for me, I'm a person who basically, I'm a believer. Without trying to proselytize, I'm a believer. And so I'm not talking about anybody else and how they go. That's fine. I'm just talking about me. I'm a believer. So in dealing with me, you sort of got to recognize that's the sort of person you're talking with. And as part of my belief, which has just been with me from time I can remember, I honestly believe that in our creation, there is within us something special that was created for us to do. So I tend to think that if you're doing what it is that you were put here to do, that is the only way you're going to find satisfaction. And that is the only way you're going to find success that is meaningful. Let me elaborate. I don't think you have to be a believer to be rich. I don't think you have to be a believer to be wealthy, to be popular, to be attractive, to be powerful, to be all of those things. You can do all of that stuff from a very selfish, self-centered perspective, if that's what you want to do. But for you to have satisfaction with what you've done, satisfaction with your wealth, satisfaction with your fame, satisfaction with your power, satisfaction with your life, in order for you to be satisfied, that comes from someplace else. And you will only be given that if you're doing what it is was you were created to do. So for me, our basic idea is clear. Look inside yourself, find out who you are and what you are, and do that. And in doing that thing, then that's when your satisfaction will come, and that's where your impact will come. Let me describe it in another way. I think it's great to be so talented and so gifted that you can be a medical doctor. That's great. But if the medical doctor operates on a patient and has done this phenomenal job of separating Siamese twins who were born connected at the head, you still need an orderly and somebody to come in and clean them and keep the germs away. And so the person who's coming in and doing the cleaning and keeping the germs away doesn't have all that phenomenal training as a medical doctor. But you need both of them. You need both of them in order to get the patient through. Which is more valuable? If you're going to live, both. You need someone who can do the operation. You need someone to go ahead and nurture you and keep you clean until the whole thing is done. And so I tend to think that you don't want to get trapped into thinking that some form of work is more important than other forms of work, that some things you do with your life is more important than other things. I think you do what it is you were gifted to do, what it is you were created to do, what it is that you were put here to do. And in doing that, you will be serving the larger good. Because in doing that, you're going to be very, very successful in what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So for me, the idea of being successful in the greater good is that when you are being authentic about who you are and what it is you have the skill to do, the interest to do, the calling to do, the passion to do, then boom, things will happen from that. It's when you're trying to be something else that you get results, but those results don't have the same meaning. And it certainly won't have the same satisfaction, as far as your personal satisfaction is concerned. So that's the way in which I approach things. I'm constantly searching to find out, what am I here for? Who am I? What it is that I have the ability and the talent to do? I sometimes define sin. I've heard it said that sin is anyone who knows the good they should do and does not do it. That's when you're messing up. When you've got the ability to do something, you can help, you can do that, and you don't do it. That's when you're messing up. So that's my approach.
That's such a great comment for students, I think, a lot of our mentees to hear, because as they're matriculating through their collegiate years, there's still a lot of question as to who am I going to be? What am I going to become? And you're flipping the script, as opposed to thinking about a specific role, as opposed to thinking about who you are, what are your gifts, how are you showing up authentically? And the more in which you're doing that, the more you're going to identify where that will lead you. And I remember even in my young career, a lot of times I felt like it was more of a fight, not a flow. And I wondered, if I had allowed myself to be more authentic, if I had allowed myself to not necessarily fit into the molds or the categories or the definitions of the day or of other people, and I allowed myself to be more in the flow, if I would have just shortcutted a lot of nonsense in my life. And so hearing you say that, it brings so much power to, you're all right just as you are.
Absolutely.
You need to discover yourself. How would you recommend people do that for themselves? A lot of times when I work with students, they're used to being told, okay, you got to get this number of hours, per semester. If this is your major, you got to make sure you take these mandated classes. So there's a lot where they're just responding to what somebody is telling them. How do you find yourself in all of that response?
Well, let me approach that from this perspective. First of all, there are people who absolutely love you, care for you, and want the best for you. It could be parents, it could be relatives, it could be friends. They do. They want the best for you. And they're going to suggest and recommend whatever is best for you. It could be professors or teachers or whatever. They're going to recommend what is best for you. But my analogy goes this way. I always recommend that people wear a good pair of shoes. Because if you got on shoes that really are just poorly made and all out of, you're just going to be messing up your feet. always wear a good pair of shoes. However, even if a shoe is a good shoe, it's got to fit your foot. And just because it's a good shoe doesn't mean it fits you. Yes, you want a good shoe, but you want one that fits. Yes, it's great to be a medical doctor, but does that fit you? Yes, it's great to be a university professor, but does that fit you? Yes, it's great to be an outstanding baseball player, but does that fit you? What is it that fits you? You may be more of a Mother Teresa soul. That's what fits you. You're not going to be wealthy being Mother Teresa, but that's what fits you. So yes, whatever it is, make it good, but it's got to also fit. Now, those people who love you, to say, no, go to college and get a degree. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Those people who say, yes, you want to be a CEO of a corporation. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Someone say, no, you want to be president. No, you want to be this. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But here's the deal. Even if you chose not to do that, Tina, what those people who love you are really trying to say is, I want you to be happy. I think your being a president will make you happy. I think your being wealthy will make you happy. I think you're getting a college degree will make you happy. But the thing they really want is to make you happy. You choose what works for you and you become happy, and then they're happy. Because otherwise, they weren't recommending you to do that thing because of you. They were recommending you to do that thing because it made them satisfied that you were doing it. When they really are looking for you, anybody who's really all your parents, anybody looking for you, want is for you to be happy. They want my baby happy. They want to know she's all right. They want to see that smile on her face. And if they see that smile on her face and they see she happy, even if she's not doing what they thought she should do, they happy. Other folk, though, may want it not because they want it for you, but because of how it makes them feel or how it makes them look. In that case, hey, you don't have to be mad at them. You just don't do it. Because all of us have our
what's so amazing about this conversation is that you're a man of the numbers. I mean, econ, mathematics, accounting, you're a man of the numbers. But listening to you, which I could do all day, you're really a man of the people. Like, you really get the interpersonal. The way that you are able to engage in your analogies, just in conversation. I think there was another calling that you could have also gone for, but you ended up your vocation ended up in accounting. But you're serving in great ways. But you have this way of engaging and storytelling that it goes beyond the numbers. And I just love that analogy of the shoe. You told me once, Tina, it's not about simply passing a bar or meeting a thing, just like you said, right? Like, there are all these different shoes out there, and maybe it fits, but maybe it's just not for you, right? It's just not your flavor. And so you talk about not just doing something to check a box or because somebody else said to do it. It's always about leaving a changed person. And you made me think a lot about how we engage so that we leave a changed person. What is it about, like, your engagement with who you are, what you do in your vocation? What is it about your engagement that you can share? Because that's again, you're a man of the numbers, but there's something deeper there. So where are we getting this from, Dr. Gabbin, this engagement aspect?
Well, you're bringing up two different issues, and I'll try to deal with both of them in the following comment. First of all, in terms of being a man of the numbers, or even in terms of, oh, gee whiz, I could have had another profession. There were individuals who've said to me, man, you sound like a preacher. You could have been in the pulpit or something. And just like you're saying, and I had a person who I loved dearly when I was in graduate school. She was in organizational behavior, Mary Beth Barris. And she could not believe that I was an accounting major, because she said my mind didn't seem to work like she thought an accountant's mind should work. Now, I don't know how she could be saying this, because she was really a nun and she was a mathematician. So I don't know how she got that. But the deal is this. With regard to that, I think part of my approach to things demonstrates that contradiction is a contradiction that's artificial. There is no conflict between your being a person of the numbers and your being concerned about people and feelings. And the fact that we put that in that box is not because it belongs in the boxes, but shows an imperfection in our thinking, in the way we look at stuff. And I think there's a deeper message in that, even the way I'm approaching it. And my message is this: you don't have to allow any type of thing to confine you from being human, regardless of what your profession is. So there is no conflict here that you have to go ahead and say you got to be this because people look at this profession that way. No, you can go ahead and do all of that. There is no conflict there. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I don't buy into the thing. And I think the fact that I rely upon scriptures as much as I do and relate to things the way I do shows that you don't have to be a preacher to have a feeling for the calling that the divine can have on your life. You ain't got to be a preacher to do that. And people like to think, oh, that's a preacher. No, that's you. And so you can't escape being the human you ought to be by saying, oh, that's for a preacher. No, it's not. It's for you. And you can't go ahead on and escape responsibility for being a person of faith just because you're not a minister. You're supposed to be a person of faith if that's what you've got. You're supposed to be someone who cares about people, even though you're involved in numbers. You're supposed to be one who's concerned about communicating and connecting, and the logic. You're supposed to do that stuff. It has nothing to do with your doggone vocation. And that, to me, is being demonstrated by the fact that this person here will always be talking about scriptures and have no interest in the pulpit. None. No, I love English. I love history. I'm a mathematician. I like numbers. I like 2 + 2 = 4. Thank you very much. That's very comfortable for me. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up the other part, which has to do with the fact that, yeah, feelings are important, and I'm going to deal with that. Now, in terms of people and interacting with people, rightly or wrongly, I get the feeling that if God put somebody in front of me and asked me a question, I'm not seeking to go out to try to mess with anybody. I'm not doing that. But when I'm put in the role of an educator or put in the role as a teacher, and you're coming to me, viewing me as an educator and viewing me as a teacher, I didn't ask you to come here. But if you do come here and you're in my presence, my assumption is, right or wrong, you were put in my presence for a reason. And I have a responsibility. I'll take a sharp right turn and then come back to this. I was not a person who was really that excited about having children per se. I figured I hadn't finished raising me yet. What the devil I look like trying to have children? But it would have been the biggest mistake of my life if I had not had my daughter. And my wife was the biggest impetus for that. But it would have been the flat out biggest mistake of my life if I hadn't had my daughter. But my attitude basically was this: while I was not seeking to be a father, once it became clear and so that thing takes priority in all the other kind of stuff I wanted to do. So for me, the idea is that once this thing comes into your life, then whatever your direction was before, this now takes over. So what did I do? What was my attitude? My attitude is that once he brings something into your life, then you're going to have to respond to that. You're going to have to respond to that. And to tell my daughter was this: when I would go through all the stuff I had to go through with her as she was growing. I'm really surprised she still loves her father and still deals with me, because she did not have an easy time of it with her father. But here it is this. I used to say to her, baby, I know you don't agree with what I'm doing. I know you don't even necessarily feel good about it at all. But the only way I can thank God for bringing you in my life is to do the very best I can to help you develop and grow, so that you would now be in a position to enjoy the life that he gave you. So my thing on this is that my responsibility, as much as I love you, my responsibility is really not to you. It's to the one who granted me the gift of letting you be in my life. And so the only way I can thank him is to do the best I can with him. Now, if you want me to change what I'm doing, you better talk to him and tell him to change my heart. Because if my heart's not changed, and if I still believe this is the best thing, even though you're upset with me, I'm doing it. Because if I think this is what's best, I'm going to do it. Now tell him to change my heart so that I say, look, Lord God, I got this crazy father who's doing all these things. Would you go ahead and talk to him and tell him, go ahead and stop messing up my life like he is, But I do it because as much as I love and want the response from her, it's the more ultimate thing that I'm concerned with. I want to be thankful to the one who gave me this opportunity. So now back to this other thing. People come into my life, I want to change. If I say you come into my life, I see you in my class, my responsibility is to you, yes, but it's the higher calling. I believe he put you here in my presence for a reason. And so my goal is this. Because he put you in my presence, I'm going to do everything I can to do what's best to you, to help you as best I can. And that does not necessarily mean you're going to like me. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be thankful. But I believe in this, that if what I'm doing is the right thing, later down the road, when you out there in that world, I'm not doing anything any different than what that world going to do. But the big difference is I like you. They don't. So when you get down here in that world and you find out what it is, if I've been true to what I'm supposed to be, I've helped you to get ready for that. I've helped you to go ahead and deal with that. I've helped you to be in a position where you know more than you did before when we came into contact. So my whole thing, and when I deal with people always, even this conversation here, I didn't volunteer for this bad boy. I'm under the pressure to do it. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how it's going to come off. I don't know anything. And I didn't ask for it. And if to tell you the truth, if he gave me a chance to get out of it, I would. But
well, you might be a seeker, but I'm a seeker too. And I have always found you fascinating because, I have thought of you as the man of the numbers because that's how I first met you. And then I started to get to know you in a different way. And I thought, wow, the layers that there are to Dr. Gabbin are just phenomenal. And the stories that you share and the way in which you engage and the fact that your vocation comes from a higher calling and you bring that passion into the classroom every day for students that are coming through semester after semester after semester since the early 90s. And you have not lost that level of passion and engagement because you do come from a higher calling. It's not about a class for you. It's not about getting them through to meet a grade and to check a box in credit hours. It's about having learned something in your class. Now, unfortunate for me, I learned that I needed to exit and go find a different vocation. But that being said, you served me in that way too. And what a difference did that make? I probably wouldn't be nearly as happy if I had tried to stick it out and do something that the shoe didn't fit. The shoe did not fit.
The idea is, as far as I'm concerned, I love accounting, by the way. Of course, I wish I could have been a baseball player professionally, but accounting is number two. But for me, accounting is a platform. My real goal is not the accounting. My real goal is to help you find yourself. My real goal is to help you see your talent. My real goal is to help you appreciate yourself. My real goal is to help you build confidence in yourself. And if accounting is something you decide to go with and stay with, God bless you, come on. But if not, hey, I'm not mad. I want you to leave a different person, a stronger person, a better person than you were when you came in. Because I want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. Just find out who you are and be you. And when you find out who you are and you suddenly lock down on that, I don't care what the world says about whether you do or do not get a degree. You do or do not stay in business. You do or you do not do one thing or another. You need to do what it is that calling is in your life. Find you and learn to appreciate you. And yes, you do have more abilities than you think you do. And no, it's not easy, but that's okay. It's easier for you because it's something that you're called for. It's impossible for me almost because it's not. I can't be you. Only you can be you. And plus being you, doggone it, adds a richness to this world that wasn't there before. There's nothing like you. No one like you. And so I want you to go ahead on and be you. And I do that in a sense by my being me. And I rely on the one who created us both to go ahead on and guide us when we lock into them. And that's I got this other analogy, and I'll throw it out there to you now.
Okay.
I got this analogy about an escalator. An escalator.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've seen escalators at a mall. The one I want you to think about, I'm sure you've flown into Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, yes.
And you've gotten off the train in Atlanta, Georgia, and then you had to go up the escalator to get to the next level to go and catch the plane again.
Yep.
And I know when you get off the train, you get to get on that escalator and you look up that doggone thing like it's going all the way up to heaven someplace. It looks so far up in the sky. Well, I want you to go ahead and get off that train, to get on that escalator, to go up to the next level to go catch a train. But Tina, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go up the down escalator. I want you to go up, but I want you to go up the down escalator. The up escalator is going up, and there's a down escalator coming down. But I don't want you just standing on it up. I want you to go up the down escalator. Now, there are three things I say is necessary for you to go up the down escalator. One, you got to make an effort. Because on the up escalator, you stand on it, thing take you up. Going up the down escalator, you got to make an effort to go up that thing. You just can't stand it, it's going to move. Second thing that's true is that the up and going up the up escalator, the effort you make has to be enough to overcome the downward force of those steps. So it can't be a wimpy effort. It can't be, a halfway effort. It can't be a kind of effort. You got to go ahead on and judge how fast that sucker coming down and then go enough speed to go up in order to go up that escalator. But the third thing I say is absolutely the most critical thing of all. If you're going to go up the down escalator, you got to make an effort, yes. The effort has to be enough to overcome the downward force, yes. But Tina, you got to go all the way up. You can't get halfway up that escalator, get tired, stop moving your legs. You do, you're back down on the first floor. You can't get 90% of the way up there. You're almost there, and you start beating your chest and looking to the world. Hey, world, look at me. Look at how well I've done. Look at how far I've come. Stop moving those legs, and you're right back down on the first floor again. You got to go all the way up. That's my analogy for life and students. Yes, you need to be pointing in the right direction. Yes, you need to be doing certain things. But I need to help you to understand that it is a struggle that you do all the time. And you got to keep at it. You got to keep at it. You got to keep at it. Because as soon as you may get a little discouraged and you just give up, you're right back down and you start again. As soon as you start getting all cocky because life been going well for you and you stop, you're right back down again. It is a day by day thing, constantly, in process of being who you are. You got to fight for it all the time because there are all these things out there willing to pull you down, willing to stop you, willing to discourage you, willing to get you to the point whereby you want to give up on it. You can't give up on you. You can't quit on you. You got to just stay at it, be who you are. And the thing that you will get out of that is not necessarily worldly acclaim, but the reward you will get out of that is you'll be sleeping well every night. You'll be at peace with you. Everybody else wondering, where's that girl? How can she be so calm? How can she be so whatever? How can she be whatever? Hey, she's at peace with herself. Why? Because she's being who she is. But she don't have this and she don't have that. It's okay. She don't need it. She don't need that. That's not what does it for her. This is what does it for her. That thing inside is what does it for her. She cool. Because she's been rewarded by it. And you can't make the world give you satisfaction. That comes from a higher level. That comes from someplace else.
You have this inspirational, tough love way about you, which, by the way, I haven't met your daughter yet, but when I do, I'm sure she's going to agree with me, and I'm sure she's going to say that you've been a phenomenal father. So I didn't need to circle back to that. That being said, the inspirational, tough love. I mean, we've talked about different aspects of your life and, how you've had to overcome things, but you always have this positive attitude. You're trying to inspire others and you're, one foot in front of the other, head down, get it done. but you're always with a smile. Where does that come from? Where does that come from?
Well, you know, I think the thing is, uh, I have seen there's an enjoyment. A lot of people don't like the idea of getting old, you know, because they think, oh, gee,
No, I don't.
I know a lot of people have problems with it. I'm especially pleased with, my age now, because I'm really, really kind of like in the last quarter of the, I've already gone through 3 quarters, so I'm in the last quarter now, so I understand that's cool. But there's a real advantage in that is that you get to look back on things. And so you get to reflect and you get to see. I have seen how my trusting what he put in me pays off. I have seen how my following and believing and trusting and the guidance. I always say that, a lot of people pray for things. And I always say that whenever that prayer comes, there are always 3 answers that you can get from a prayer. Yes, no, or wait.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen how all 3 of those play out, especially the no. I look back on some no's I've had and I say, oh, good Lord, thank you, Jesus. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you didn't give me what I wanted. I'm so glad. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I can see that. I've also seen how the wait works out. No, I didn't get it then, but okay, later. And so I have seen, I'm not telling you rumors or stuff I heard or stuff I read. At this age that I am now, I can tell you, I've seen it. It has worked for me.
So can you give me a story? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but can you give me a story of either a no or a wait? And now all these years later, your reflection of either that no or that wait, how that came full circle for you?
Yeah, well, the no, yes, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
I'll give it to you. I was pretty good in football and baseball. But I'll take football. As it turned out, I could take either one. I could take both of them. I probably stood more of a chance that if I was going to go pro, it probably would have been baseball as opposed to football. But I had there two examples of it. One, growing up, I wanted to go to West Point. Yes. In fact, I memorized stuff out of books as a child growing up because I wanted to go to West Point. I was watching stuff on TV about it, right? I wanted to do it. In fact, there's this one thing that's there. Like I remember one statement that was made where an upperclassman would come to a young plebe and ask him what the time it was to the plebe. And the answer would be, sir, I am deeply embarrassed and greatly humiliated due to the unforeseen circumstance of which I have no control. The inner workings of hidden mechanism, my cathar, and such an act with great Siberia movement, which time is commonly reckoned that I cannot in degree state the exact time, sir. Oh, but to the best of my humble ability, I think it's over 800 hours. I memorized that as a kid before I even was through high school. And I don't know why I remember that one. Then there's another one about how's the cow, and I memorized the answer for how's the cow. I did that. So how is it that Alexander's not in West Point? Okay. My last year of high school, I was co-captain of the football team. We played reasonably well. At the end of the season, we didn't have the greatest season, and I believe that was my fault. There's no question about it. In fact, I was sort of like a star, but in my last actual football game against my arch rival, I allowed the fact we were on TV and all the rest of that, I allowed it to get into my head. And I was all worried and concerned about TV and how I might look on TV. So I didn't play. I didn't show up to play the game. I was more concerned about how I looked on camera. Bottom line is we lost the game. I can blame that on me, losing the game. All right. But anyway, afterwards, the coach came to me and he said to me, West Point has an interest in you. Would you like to go? And I said, no, I don't want to. Now, why did I say no, I didn't want to? When in effect, I had always wanted to go to West Point. Why did I say no? Well, I also knew that to go to West Point, you needed to go ahead and get on the list of your senators, because each senator was able to nominate 2 people to go to West Point. And I had to get a nomination for my senator to go to West Point. And by the way, my head coach then was a guy by the name of George Young, who ended up being the general manager for the New York Giants. you know, So then he had asked me, and I told him no. Well, Alexander, this proud little black boy from East Baltimore, was not going to admit to this white man that he didn't know who his senator was. And I knew I'd have to get permission from my senator to go. And I knew that no one in my household knew who the senator was either, because my family was not a family that got involved in politics. And so I said no out of racial pride and not wanting to admit to the white man that I did not know who my senator was. Now, years later, I found out from another friend of mine who had gone to West Point when I was at a reunion, 50-year reunion from my high school. He says, Alex, you crazy, brother. Don't you understand that West Point wanted you to play ball, and they would have made all kind of changes for that? You didn't have to know a darn thing about your senator. They wanted you to play ball. They didn't give a damn about your doggone senator. You wouldn't even had to go through that route. They had another route for you. So here it is now, out of my ignorance, I say no to what it is I wanted to do. Wow, how bad is that? Well, here's the no. God also knew that Alexander was a very committed, serious young guy who would do whatever his commanding officer said do. He knew just how gung-ho I was as a child. Had I gone to West Point, you know what the outcome would have been, Tina? I'd have been over in Vietnam, and I'd probably been dead trying to do something heroic. So that no probably saved my life. The fact that I didn't get to do what I wanted to do in the process. Yeah. And I think there are other examples like that too, whereby you could see how things didn't work, the way you wanted them to work. In some other cases, things that you wanted at the time didn't come right then. They came much, much, much later in your life, when you were then better able to handle those things, And so for me, I've learned that you do the very best that you can. You do the very best that you can. And then you trust the outcome. Now, when I say trust the outcome, okay, here's the example. Here's the example of that. There is this story. There's this story about two jugs that were being carried by this woman down this long hill to go to where the well was. And she would fill both of those jugs up. And then she would walk back up the hill, because that's where she got the water. Mm-hmm. So the one jug, though, had a sort of an imperfection in it. It had a crack in it. And so when she would fill it up, the water that was in it would sort of leak out. And by the time she got it back up to the house at the top of the hill, one jug would still be full of water. The other one, most of the water had gone because it dripped out. And the jug that was imperfect, that had, all the water leaking, was complaining that, oh, gee whiz, I'm worthless. You sure to get rid of me. I don't have any real value. I'm so depressed. And so the owner of the jug says, look, the next time we go down to the bottom of the hill, I want you to describe for me what you see coming back up the hill, right? Just go ahead and make a note of it and describe it to me. So sure enough, the next time they had to go to get water, they went back down the hill again. The owner of the jugs filled both of the jugs up, put them on her shoulder, went up and started going back up the hill. And when they got back up at the top of the hill and got back into the house again, the owner went to the jug that was imperfect and said, okay, what did you notice coming up that hill? He says, I didn't see him very much at all. It was just a whole bunch of flowers, up there. I mean, the flowers look really nice and everything, but I just saw a whole bunch of flowers up there. That's all I saw. I didn't see much of anything. And the owner said, yeah, that's right. I knew you were imperfect. And so I planted seeds along that roadway there so that when you come up, you'll be watering those seeds. And when you get to the top, all right.
I've never heard that story. That's actually beautiful. I'm going to steal that from you. You get full credit.
That's okay, fine. So the deal is this, and you doing what you do. Paul planted. Apollos watered. But God gave the increase. To me, my job is to talk to you, do the best I can. My job is to do wherever good is, I can do it. Wherever I can, do it as best you can. But I'm not responsible for what the total outcome going to be. Because somebody else got to do something else. But the total increase is going to come from some. You do your job in this thing here. And then you don't get yourself concerned about what the outcome could be, because you can't do more than your job. Remember, you're made in his image, but you ain't him.
Okay. so that story reminds me, and I'm going to end on this story because I love this story, and it brings it back to you, a personal story about you. Will you share the story of the Baltimore pastor, and talking about like not knowing how you're going to end up impacting, and then you have to go back and all of a sudden over time you see. So you told me a story about being in a church and you didn't know the pastor, but when you were in that church, he knew you and he had you stand up and he said your name to the entire congregation. And it was in that moment that you realized how for all these decades, you had some sort of impact on somebody else, but you had no idea that that was happening. Can you share that story?
Yeah, well, what happened, I was in the church and I'd known of the pastor, but I didn't know him, the pastor. I didn't think the pastor knew me either, but he recognized me there. And he said to me, when he saw me, he had me stand up. And he told the congregation, he says, hey, this is Alexander Gabbin. He said, you went to Baltimore City College, didn't you? I said, yeah, I went to City College. He said, and yeah, you put on a football team too, didn't you? He said, yeah, I've been on a football team. And your number was 89 too, wasn't it? Yeah, my number was 89. He said, yeah, well, what you don't know is that I also, and you're from East Baltimore too, aren't you? Yeah, I'm from East Baltimore. He said, yeah, well, I'm from East Baltimore also. I lived in a barbershop with my father and mother, and you don't know it, but when you were going to city, I would follow you because you were my hero. And that doggone thing scared me. It scared me because here I am, a young kid, 15, 16, 17 years old. And there is some other young guy who in my neighborhood is actually looking at what I do and admiring it. And I had no idea I was having that kind of influence on him. And the thing that scared me is that it sort of said, that means you never know who's watching you. You never know what's going on. And so the idea is, in the larger sense, the thing I concluded was this. God had allowed me to actually see and recognize something that had happened positive, as a way of reinforcing and reminding me that people could be watching me. But I think it's true for Tina, and it's true for Joanne, it's true for all of us. It's just that we may not have been blessed with an opportunity to see it. When you talk about mentorship, I wrote down, and I'm going to end on that if I may. I wrote down the names of people whom I thought, without them necessarily knowing it and aware of it, were being mentors. One person I wrote down the name of it, Mrs. Harvey, in the church I grew up in back in Baltimore. I could look at that woman and I can see how full of sincerity she was and how helpful she was to me. Mrs. Drake, who was a principal in the school system back then, picked me out and decided that, yep, at 14, 15 years old, I was going to be co-chair of Men's Day in the church there. Knowing full well I'm fully unprepared for that, but she's seeing something in me that she thinks can be developed, so she's having me go with an older man to be a co-chair of Men's Day. But then the other one that's even more touching, and I'm hoping I don't lose it over this. At 13 years old, I'm playing baseball for Dobkins Athletic Club. And while playing baseball for Dobkins Athletic Club at 13 years old, we're in the championship and I'm doing well. I mean, I'm the most valuable player on the squad. I got all that going for me. I'm the first Black player to be even on the squad because it's an all-white squad. And I'm playing with them, and we play a game where we win the first game in the morning because it's single elimination. You lose, you go home. You win, you keep moving forward. We won the first game in the morning. And so we were just waiting to play the game in the afternoon. And so the players, many of us just went over to this local place called the White Coffee Pot in Baltimore. And when we're sitting there, and I'm at the counter with the other little guys, we're getting ready trying to get something to eat. And everybody orders stuff. And I noticed they bring my food in a bag to me. And I was so full of euphoria with hanging with the guys, I didn't really pay attention. I mean, I should have been more alert, but I wasn't. I just went ahead on it and saw it in the bag, and I didn't want it in the bag. I'm gonna sit here and eat with the rest of the guys. So I started taking my stuff out the bag. And I saw the waitress get kind of nervous, and she ran over to the manager, and the manager came over to me and said, "You can't eat in here." And then it hit me like, oh crap, yeah, what am I thinking? I didn't realize that, I needed to get clearance before I could go ahead and eat in that restaurant. So I put my stuff back in the bag and I got up to leave. As I was getting up to leave, I looked over in the booth sitting there, and my baseball coach, who worked for Mrs. Dobkins, I saw him sitting there, and he saw me look at it, and he looked away. And I didn't say anything. I just turned and went on outside. and went out and sat down on a curb. And this little white boy who was on the team by the name of Pudgy came out because he had gotten them to put his food in a bag. And he came out and sat down next to me and we just talked. That's what I call mentorship. That's what I call mentorship. And then on that same team, that same year, Mrs. Dobkin had us all in her station wagon, taking us out to a drive-in theater. Y'all may not know about drive-in movies, but there was a drive-in theater.
Coming back again. They're coming back again. I think Elon Musk just opened one for Tesla.
We went to a drive-in theater. This is Mrs. Dobkins now. And we're all talking, we're all happy, we're on the back of her little station wagon because we're going to go to a drive-in movie. And as we all pull a noise and loud, and so we pull up in, Mrs. Dobkins pulls up in there, and the person who's at the booth started counting the little kids in there to see how many were there. And then he saw me. And when he saw me, he said, whoa, he can't come in here. And Mrs. Dobkins said, but he's with us. And the guy said, I don't care who he's with. He can't come in here. So all of a sudden, she had to turn that station wagon around and leave that drive-in movie. And that van, that station wagon then was as quiet as could be. No more doggone noise in there. But what Mrs. Dobkins did, she says, oh, now we're going to go out to Herring Run and look at the water coming out the rocks. And so she drove out to Herring Run, which is a local park, and we went up there and we ended up drinking water coming out the rocks. And that was our concept. But she then pivoted off of that experience to go head on and try to find a way to bond it. I call that thing mentorship in the process. And then there was this guy when I was in public accounting. I was in public accounting, training to be an auditor. And I had done these work papers and all the rest of it, and the auditor was working on, and I don't even remember his name. But when he gave me the work papers, he said, look, those work papers are full of red marks that I put in there for stuff that you did wrong that needs to be done. But you know what? If I didn't think you had talent, I wouldn't have even taken the time to put it in there. I think you got ability. Go ahead and get that work done and change it. I call that mentorship. So when you talk about you're doing what you want to do to be a mentor, my thing is those opportunities and those experiences and those things come about in all different kinds of ways. And then you just have to reach inside of you and seize the moment at that time to go head on as, what did I call sin? Anyone who knows the good he should do and doesn't do it sin. Mr. Al in that restaurant, the white coffee pot, looked away. Pudgy, smartest little thing on the team, little white boy. Tell the doggone people, put my stuff in a bag, I'm going outside with him. That's what I'm talking about.
It's a rich life. You finding all of these mentorship moments, thank you for reaching back and pulling these forward, because you're right. Mentoring it can happen in the blink of an eye, and it's about doing the right thing in service of another, which brings us all the way back to you being a seeker and trying to figure out how to make a difference for the greater population. You've done that your whole life. For those who have the pleasure of listening to our conversation today, especially if you are a JMU student or you're in a JMU alumni, if you haven't gotten to know the people at JMU who serve the way that Dr. Gabbin serves, then you are missing a great opportunity to be mentored in their moments and how they serve every student every day through all of the experiences of their life. I had a chance to come back and meet Dr. Gabbin 30 years later, and man, is my life richer for that. So I want to say thank you so much to you, Alex, for the time that you've given today, all the wisdom that you've shared with us, but more importantly, all that you do on a daily basis at JMU. I know you're in your office right now, aren't you? Are you teaching class today?
Yes. Yeah.
So the man's always working. He's always working. You'll never find him at home because he's always working with a student in his office doing stuff. But I cannot thank you enough for your engagement with all the communities that you serve, whether it's the Black MBA community nationally and what you've taken that to at James Madison University. To me, as a friend, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm gonna sign off here with everybody. We're gonna post this on turnmentoring.com. So please check us out there. You'll also see some clips on social media. And if you want more of Dr. Gabbin, you know where to find him. You just got to go to James Madison University, that accounting department, he'll be there. So thank you so much for your time today, sir. And I look forward to seeing you on campus next time.
Thank you so much, Tina, and have a good day now.
All right.